my read setup? Can you be more specific? What are you wondering about? Like, are you asking me for like cane tubes and things like that, or I use a the Furlow HDR gouge and the N3 HDR shape, staple Glotan, sometimes Hinnaker, and that's about it. Cane, I use whatever. If a shaper tip, let's say there's like this middle, down the middle, like perfect shaper tip that you love. If you go a little narrower than that, it'll make the bass pitch be a little higher, so in a way sharper. But the downside of that is it could also feel very shallow. You have to be careful that you don't get too narrow, but you'll be more up to pitch with the downside of the sound getting a little shallow. The other way, if it's wider, the pitches can be much lower most of the time, but you'll get more depth. So you've got to find the right balance and the right tie length with each shaper tip that you have, because you can always tie longer and shorter to compensate with the deficiencies that is caused by the width of the shape. So it's a very challenging process to figure out what the best shaper tip is for you. I hope that helps. So for the two of you that's watching, I have a rehearsal this afternoon of Beethoven 9, first rehearsal. So I'm just trying to make some reads for the Beethoven 9, which is a very long and taxing piece of music. So I have a few blanks that I made a couple days ago, and I'm just finishing it, but not all the way because I want to finish it at the hall. I'm glad that you study with Titus. I actually saw Titus last week in New York, so um, he looked like he was doing well. It's hard. I enjoy making those videos, and I'm trying to make more of them. But because of how detailed you have to be with the camera angles, because I want to show you what I'm doing, I'm actually trying this version out so that maybe while I'm actually making my own reads, I could talk with whoever is watching about reads. So feel free to just ask me anything, and I don't know how good the quality is, but I'll try to show you as much as I can. Um, but I'll try to find a way. I just need better cameras and better camera angles to make good videos. Yeah, sorry. My theory with reads for a specific piece is, of course, the Beethoven 9, because of the scherzo, the second movement, you need a reed that's light enough to get you through the whole movement. But that doesn't mean that every reed has to be light. What I'm talking about is you need a lot of similar reeds that you be comfortable switching back and forth. For example, I would probably use a different reed for the third movement because it's more lyrical. So I need something that's light for the second movement, something that's more something that'll take my air better for the third movement, and that's just two right there. And I need backups to those two, which makes it four. And usually a backup to a backup is enough, but um, depending on how well I'm prepared and stuff, I would like to have backup to the backup if possible. Of course, the second backup is not going to be as good as the other ones, but um, it's just better to have backups to the backup as well because you just never know how that read is going to turn out. Hope that helped. I mean, I studied with a teacher that was, I studied with John Frollo at NEC, and his story was always that he would have five plus reads on his stand at all times, and he would always switch back and forth depending on what is required of the piece from the piece. And of course, he is like the master of all reed making, and he was able to do that. And I since I've worked with him, I got used to just making a lot of reeds that way. And if I have the time and the capability and the ability to do that, I would definitely make as many reads as possible for any concert because I mean it carries over to the week after this week and everything like that. So it doesn't just go to waste after one concert. More reads, more power to you. So if you're wondering, curious, at this point I'll probably leave this read and then finish it at the hall. Do you want to see the read? Yes, no, maybe. Hit that like button if you want to see the read. So, uh, can you see that? Let's see. That's the profile. Yeah. I don't know if that's helpful. Can you see? Is it good enough quality for you to see? This is another read. This is my second read for the day. Basically doing the same thing to this one. That's true. Of course, yeah. Do you have any other questions? I'm here, so I'm available to answer any questions. Well, it's great that you're going to Brevard. Congrats on that. Um, have a good time. Most of all, it's your summer, so don't be too stressed about musical things. Of course, you're going to learn, and you will meet people that you will know for the rest of your life. Um, so do learn and have a great time. Um, be a good colleague because you might see them for the rest of your life. And most importantly, I don't know who the faculty is this year, but you know, try really hard to get to know the faculty, learn from them, and just soak in every bit of information you can get from them. Because now I've realized that those moments that I had with my faculty at festivals was the most precious times of my young student career. So keep that in mind. They will go it'll go a long way to get to know them personally. So the question is, here's more read specific question. I'll try to read at like 73, clip it, open maybe down to 72 or something. And then as I try to clip it incrementally down to 70, it gets too hard. Okay, so the act of clipping, you're probably clipping because it's too flat. I mean, too flat or too noisy. You have to find a good balance of what is the right way to go about clipping or starting the read low enough not to hit that stump, the stump that causes me to overscrape. I mean, that's a great question because that's something that we all try to figure out. And with your first question, by 70, if it's too hard, that means you clipped too early in a way. Whenever you clip the reed because it's too light or too loose or too noisy. Um, you might fall in the trap of thinking that it's too noisy because the crow is too wild. Make sure that the crow is wild in a way where you know it needs a clip. Sometimes what I used to do was it was very hard, but then the vibrations were getting very wild because the heart and the back was very thick and the tip was very thin. So that balance between the tip and the heart wasn't balanced well enough. And what I did was since it was rattling and noisy, I would start clipping, which would cause the tip to just get shorter, but the heart was still very thick. So what I do is actually I don't scrape the back until I find the balance between the tip and the heart right, and then I get it down to maybe about 71 and a half, then which I know is about the right length for me to put the back in, knowing that the balance between the tip and the heart is correct. So, you know, be careful that you're not making your tips too thin, which would confuse you into thinking that the reed is too light or too noisy, which makes you clip. Um, yeah, it took me a while to figure that part out, but hopefully this can kind of help you go in that direction. What is the right way about clipping or starting the reed low enough to not hit this stump that causes, over scraping is caused by many things, but um, the thing that actually helped me to fix this problem was trusting that the read it will be good enough tomorrow. Um, if you try to finish your read the first day, especially if you're a person that gouges, um, like you soak a reed for in hot water for like 30 minutes, you gouge, you shape, that takes like an hour, right? So at that point, the reed is already over soaked, and if you're trying to finish a reed that is over soaked, you're always going to over scrape. So find like a step in your reed making where you know that it will not get any better today at that point, and just let the reed sit and completely dry it out and come back to it the next day or even the 2 days after that. I find that my success rate gets much higher when I trust that I can let the reed sit and come back to it another day. Um, I hope I didn't confuse you with all of this talking, but hopefully that helped. All the reads that I'm working on today, they are reads that I made 2 days ago, and I just actually let them sit out, like not even in the reed case. I just let it sit on my desk, and I'm taking them out for the first time, and they feel better than actually than when I left them 2 days ago. Come back anytime. I'll probably be doing this more and more often. It was nice talking to you. players? The two of you watching, any oval players? The one person watching, are you an oval player? I guess not. Any oval players out in the audience? questions, feel free to ask. Hello. Are you a musician, Nathan? Thank you. Are you a musician? Oh, are you an oboe player? Wonderful. Thank you for your kind words. I use the this is the N3 HDR shaper tip, and I use the HDR gouger as well. How about you? What do you use? Cool. Do you like your Brandon X shape? Uh, it doesn't go lower than a C. It doesn't go higher than a C sharp. So somewhere in the middle. Yes, I play a B copy of the Luray B copies. I also have an AK. I just switch back and forth. The B series are actually the bottom joint is slightly longer, very slightly, so that creates more depth, mm, but also makes it a little lower in pitch. So you have to kind of work around with your reed. but the tone of it I do like much better than the 8K or the Royale. But sometimes it is a little low, so there's a give and take there. What do you use? Yeah, maybe. Oh, that's cool. Did you like it, Joseph? I mean, that's all you can ask for. Smooth, even, and vibrant. If it's up in pitch, that's great. Um, I either go from gouging all the way to semi-finished, or if I gouge and let it sit and dry, um, I come back the next day and shape it and everything, and then if I start from there, I try to finish it in one sitting. No, I'm here to answer questions, so ask all the questions you want to ask. You know, I actually used to um, work for the HDR company that makes my gougers, and you know that blade is supposed to only last for like 100 pieces of cane, So actually, I switch out my blades 100 pieces, which is like very small compared to like an NLED. I'm assuming, but I must say that the the success rate off of the HTR machine is quite high. So you're actually not making as many reads as you would on maybe on other machines. So I think there's a give and take. But for me, to just answer your questions, you know, I do my own blade replacements. So I don't really send it in, but it's quite often I switch out my blades. You could resharpen blades, but when you need to be when you have to making like the best reads possible every week to perform, what happens is when you use up a brand new blade, yes, it gets dull, but let's say you want to resharpen them. The curvature of the very tip of the blade is different even if you are able to get it sharp, and that curve is what makes the read or breaks the read. So you know, I actually don't resharpen them after I do about 100 pieces. I just replace them with a fresh blade because I don't want to resharpen a modified curve on a used blade. I don't know if that made sense, but that's my reasoning. Yeah, I mean, we all have high standards as oboe players, don't we? I just own two, so when one is in major repair, I have another one back up to use while that one's getting fixed. So I just have two, but I would like actually one more, because two feels a little too weak actually. Uh, my measurements are 59 down the middle, but I actually keep it the same throughout the seasons because um, you know, in my opinion, different brands, different types of cane come in different hardness. So it really doesn't matter. I want to keep the gouge exactly the same. And if it feels too heavy, I change the hardness of the cane more than the thickness of the gouge. What has been your most successful go-to cane? Because you're one of two people watching this, I actually bought a bag of Grimaud from Advantage Double Reeds. It has been the best cane I've used in like the past 2 years. I actually got it about a month ago. Just now started using it. I don't know. You should give it a try if you want. But it's like the smoothest piece of cane I've had in the past 2 years. I'm not lying. So if you're up for it, you should go check it out. Grumeau from Advantage. I normally don't share like what cane is good or bad because as soon as I share it, people like literally go buy the entire stack of them. So I don't share, but this is probably my last bag because it takes a while to get that shipment in from U.S. to Canada. So if you want, you should go buy them. How do you ensure tight size when forming a blank? Well, what I found is whenever I get a new blade, the sides are as tight as it'll get, um, and as the blade ages, the sides sometimes get a little loose and things like that. That also can be helped by how you pick out your cane. How the back of the piece of cane you're gouging, how straight or bowed it is, could make it more open at the top once you make the reed. How twisted the cane is could also make it not reliable. So a lot of things goes into it, but gouge I think is number one, and the cane prep is number two for me. Can you talk a little about what you're seeking when you're assessing your crow? First thing I do is how the crow begins. When you blow into a reed, how much air does it need to get the crow started? When you're making the reed, you want to get the tip thin enough to where it starts vibrating with a very small amount of air and pressure. So that's the number one, that's the first thing. And once you start increasing the volume and the velocity of the air, You want the crow to begin and start getting louder with the double crow happening, and you want it to be where you're blowing a good amount of air and the reed is taking the air and the crow is balanced with both octaves. Once you start pushing the sound, if the crow starts to get too wild or too rattly, that means the reed is too loose in a way, and you need to find a way, either by clipping or scraping, to get rid of the intensity of the crow. And the best crow for me, this is a reed I made. I mean, if you have the time, you should go watch the beginning of this stream. Um, let's see, like this one. Like it takes air, and the bottom crow comes in when I'm blowing at let's say a forte velocity. I like that with the setup that I have, but with the read that I'm making now, I mean it's fine, but the crow comes in a little too early. So I want to make that crow a little more contained, and that's what I'm doing right now. I hope that made sense. If you want something more detailed, you can just ask me. In my opinion, and that also depends on your setup, what kind of tubes you're using, what kind of oboe you're on. But you know your setup best. And for my setup, when the crow comes in too easily, it's a very thin sound. It's too vibrant, and if it gets too rattly at the end, it's a very uncontrollable read in a way. So what I like is I want the single crow to come in, and at the end of my forte velocity with my air, I want the low crow to kind of gently settle in. Of course, someone else could crow the exact same read, and they could go. They usually get a lot more low crow out than I do, and that's what made me decide that for me, when I crow, I need a very small amount of low crow, which is usually the right amount of crow for other reed makers that I trust. Like the reed right now, I get a crow out, a very nice sounding crow at the end of my crow, but when I play it, it's too vibrant. It's too noisy in a way. So I'm gonna clip it so that the low crow comes in only at the very end of my crow. I use Glotan 47, brass or silver, it doesn't matter. I use all of both of them. Um, but I do find that the brass bends more easily, so it lasts less. Even now, it's getting close, but I like that crow to settle in a little later, and the only way for me at this point to do that is to just clip a hair, like half a hairline, and hopefully that'll just get rid of that excess noise that I have. I try to make it as scientific as possible with something that is not very scientific, but I might like this one because now the crow is actually coming at the very end. do like it because of the where the note sits now. It's a little the resistance. There's a little bit of resistance, and it's the tip is a little thick, so I will balance that out, which will create more low crow and noise. Probably need another crow clip or two, and I'm probably done after that for today, at least. Add more depth. So the upper part of the window is you're talking about like where the heart meets the back, the window. If that's the spot you're talking about, that is a spot for depth, but it really depends on how the reed is balanced. If you just you can't just think, you know, forgive me. If I only think that is like the depth spot and start scraping that area, it's gonna unbalance the reed, and then you're gonna start scraping other parts of the reed, which will create over scraping. So you kind of have to, yes, that adds depth, but that is not the only spot for depth. So you got to find the right spot for that. You know, I'm not helping you with this one very much, but I do agree that is a spot for depth, for more depth, but not always. By measurements, the only measurements I live by are 59 down the middle. I have to stay true to, because if it's slightly above 59, I do feel that the reed is too hard. If it's less than that, it's flat. So 59 down the middle, and I measure the ear measurements when you scrape, when you shape. They have to be at least 47 up to 49 is okay. And then I do thread measurements, which is 53 to 54, very small windows there. Um, those measurements I have to stay true to. Other than that, it only only measurement I measure after that is how long I tie the reeds. You know, I change my tie length all the time depending on the weather, the temperature, and location. But other than that, I have no real numbers for you. I don't measure how thick the hard is when after you scrape. I don't even have a measurement tool for that. Um, but when I do gouge work, those numbers are all gouge numbers. So gouging numbers. So that I try to really trust and live by. Other than that, I have nothing. You know, since you said you're a teacher, I will be leaving up all these live streams on my channel for people to see. So feel free to share them, subscribe to the channel, and have your students look at them if they are interested. I'm only doing this so that you know I can help. seems to be a contention. Also making reads by measuring finished read is a topic that seems to be of contention sometimes. Making reads by feel seems to be the way to go. Trying to figure out teaching reads. I mean, you know, measuring the reads after they're finished might be a easier way to understand, and you know, you can give out a number, but as someone that has never done that, I think it works without measuring reads after you finish. So that's what I've been doing basically. Um, but I'm sure it works both ways. People that measure reads, I think they make great reads as well. Okay, so the read's finished, and I have to go eat lunch. So that was an hour and a half. So feel free to watch the video if you want. Feel free to share them. It's gonna be on the channel. Awesome, thank you.